And one massive tip that probably should be in this guide somewhere, listening through to your music and responding to every element and asking yourself, does this need to be here? Is a really good thing to get in the habit of doing. Playing with the dynamics, morphing that sound. You can hear the other stuff I've got going on as well. I'll go into that in a sec. What's up, cuties? We are back for one final episode of the Song Completion Kit series. Today is stage 5 of 5, and we are talking about the finishing touches, bringing everything in your track together, giving it that final lick of polish, that sense of personality, those flourishes and touches that are really going to bring it to life and make it really exciting and engaging. This is going to bring the series to a close, but stick around if you want to find out what's going to happen next on the channel and other things that are happening more generally with Outside Sound. But without further ado, let's get stuck in and read some PDF, because who doesn't love to read PDFs? Okay, here we are. Stage 5 of 5, finishing touches. So we, at this point in our songwriting process, have finished the arrangement. You've probably iterated a couple of times. When we get into Ableton, I will show you the different rounds of revisions and stuff that I made to the first draft that you saw in the last episode. But usually from that first draft stage, I make a few rounds of revisions, make sure that everything is sitting the way that I want it to sit. And then we're listening in a slightly different mode to just kind of elevate all of that music that we've got and set it off and make it as good as it can possibly be. Our potential blocks at this stage is not having space in the arrangement for these kind of extra details and stuff like that. We might not be sure when in the track to add in extra elements, like what points are going to be appropriate or where to emphasize or de-emphasize different parts of your track. And the third one is new sounds not fitting the rest of the track. So we'll go straight into some strategies for actually addressing some of those problems. The first one, and we covered this right in the very first episode of this series, is to listen through to your track and make notes. I've got my cool notepad. I listen through, again, same with the revisions on the arrangement, listening through to just an exported file, writing different notes with different timestamps, making these tweaks, listening for, oh, it would be really great if there was more of a build up into this transition from one section to another, or there might be a time where it feels quite static and you want things to kind of groove along for a while, but your ear is kind of wandering, your focus is sort of drifting away. So maybe there's something that you could sprinkle in there to add some interest and just kind of grab people's attention again, and while you're kind of still developing that particular vibe. I think listening to the music that you're working on outside of actually doing anything to it, such a massive help in terms of actually knowing what the next steps to take actually are, and that's as true here towards the finish line as it is at any other point in the process. Clearing some room in your arrangement. This is kind of like a dual purpose thing where we are making changes to how our tracks are arranged, what voices are playing which parts, in order to create more space for unique moments, but also moving those different parts around, changing the arrangement in those ways, itself creates new points of interest and different anchors for the listener, different inflections, variations on a theme, different vibes for the same musical material. So it may be that you need to take some stuff out, one that differentiates it from other sections, other points in your track, and two, that can then give you room, if you feel it's appropriate, you may not even need to, but if you feel it's appropriate, that can give you room to fit something new in there, a one-off sound that you don't hear anywhere else in the track. Our third strategy, this is something that is super helpful if you can't figure out how to make sounds to fit the rest of your track. Resampling your existing elements is a really cool and fun way to get new layers for these kind of one-off effects and finishing touches that sound like they're a part of your track but bring it into a slightly different world. So we're talking here about recording some element of your track and putting some processing on it, delays or pitch shifting or different weird spectral things, anything that you can think of to throw at it, and recording it and resampling it over and over and over, stretching things out, adding longer tails on stuff, reversing things, all of these really fun, creative exercises to play with sound using source material that's already in your track and already belongs to the world that you've created sonically. That's one that's really fun. And then our fourth and fifth kind of play off one another, and it's just about how much we fit into the track. But our fourth strategy is don't just add flourishes at the ends of phrases. You want to kind of pepper these in interesting places. You don't want it to be entirely predictable when, aha, there's going to be a new sound. Right, we're reaching the end of this 16-bar section. Here comes another cool riser. Or we're reaching the end of these 8 bars, going from the first half of the verse into the second half of the verse. Here's a fun reverb swell or something like that every single time that section rolls around or that phrase ends. Cut them in at weird points and do stuff that might initially feel unnatural and see if you can make it fit and make it work. Because the whole idea with this kind of approach to trying to finish these things off and add finishing touches that make things interesting that I'm trying to convey here is that we want unexpected and exciting things to happen when we listen back to the track. And if you're kind of too predictable about the way that you apply these special unexpected touches, they stop being unexpected. Which brings us to the final one, don't overdo it. You don't need to be doing this all the way through your track. For certain styles, it'll be more appropriate than others, as you'll see when we get into Ableton. I really like to bring a dub reggae kind of approach to my tracks, so I'm doing a lot of reverb sends, delay sends, automating different effects and stuff like that, but that's not appropriate for every style of music. And even when I am working with my material in that way and performing throughout the entire length of a track with effects and production stuff, I almost always cut a load of the stuff that I record out, because if there's too much going on, there's too many of these layers and one-off sounds interjecting into the flow of the music, it starts to just really detract. It becomes muddy or unclear, or you're kind of stepping on the toes of the musical ideas that you spent so long developing. So all this is about is making these really fun offsets and contrasting elements that allow the core musical material that you've written to really shine. And it's very easy to overdo it. So do be aware of that. And one massive tip that probably should be in this guide somewhere, but it's only now that I'm talking things through at the end of this whole process that I've come across this one. So this is a freebie for all of you, a special bonus if you've watched the video series, but actually listening through to your music and responding to every element and asking yourself, does this need to be here? Is a really good thing to get in the habit of doing, because if you are in any way doubtful or unsure about an element, take it out. Remove everything that isn't serving a purpose in your track, because if it's not serving a purpose, if it's not functional, if it doesn't communicate with the rest of the music in some way or provide some kind of important function, even if it's a very subtle function, but if it's not providing some kind of function in your track, whether that's a vital thing or a very subtle thing, then it doesn't need to be there. Just get rid of it. Your track will be better for it. And that's obviously very true of these finishing touches and special things. So try not to overdo it is our fifth and final strategy for this stage. So let's hop over into Ableton and I will show you what I've been working on. Actually, before we hop over into Ableton, there's something that I wanted to show you. So these are the revisions of the track that I've been working on that I've gone through. So it looks like we've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds of revisions. There might have been a sixth one in there somewhere where I was naughty and I didn't actually export it and do it outside of Ableton. But yeah, so each of these is an exported file from the end of a session that I then start the next session by listening to, going through with my notepad and just writing everything out and getting stuff going that way. This is kind of key to the process. It's the most time-consuming part. It's not particularly interesting to cover in a video like this, but all I'm doing, I'm using all of the stuff that we've talked about so far, particularly that stuff about the arrangement, and I'm listening through to my track and reflecting and thinking what needs to happen at each point in this process for this to become a finished piece of music. So there's been some tweaks to the arrangement. I've been doing these revisions while I've been adding the finishing touches and automation and all of that sort of thing as well. So it's really when stuff starts to get into a timeline that this sort of iterative writing lists and making to-do lists and making all of these revisions process starts to happen, and it's going all the way through to the finished article, which we now have, not there, here. So besides the arrangement stuff, again, I've made some tweaks, but it's overall pretty similar to what you've seen before. What are the things at this stage, the finishing touches, that are going to build on the skeleton of the arrangement, flesh it out and bring it to life? Well, the first and probably the biggest thing, there's kind of two big things. The first one is there's a hell of a lot of an automation that I've done on the bass. Now, you're probably looking at that and thinking, my God, what is wrong with her? But in my defense, all of this was performed in a couple of takes. I did some minor editing here and there. I use a MIDI controller and I map the synthesis parameters to the faders here. You can see stuff changing. And I just let the track play and record the automation in and play around with it, react, respond to what I'm hearing, and that is a really fun, hands-on way that I like to add interest and dynamics and just kind of weird wobbliness to my synth sounds, and that's also the process that I use for dubbing when we get to that with effects and stuff like that. So I'm going to play a bit and we're actually going to hear what that sounds like now. Playing with the dynamics, morphing that sound. You can hear the other stuff I've got going on as well. I'll go into that in a sec. It's fun watching the wavetable kind of change and screw around. Anyway, you get the idea. I recorded a bunch of automation. it made the bass go crazy, and it's a lot of fun. Some of the other stuff that I've done, we've changed the octave of some of these chord stabs. Instead of them just kind of being in the same spot all the time. So that's a fun thing to play around with. And then chokes on own saliva.
The good and the just were like gold dust in the city. I had no illusions. I was not one of them. I was no hero. Just me and the gun and the crook. My options had decreased to a singular course.
And then the other big thing that you probably noticed while I was kind of playing that bit is all of this stuff. So what I have done, as I was showing you before, I've used the MIDI controller and I've mapped it to a couple of different effects. Now, at the time of recording, I have an active UAD subscription because they were doing like a really good deal of like 3 months for 99 cents or something like that. So I'm making full use of that. I've got this Lexicon Reverb unit that I'm using. It doesn't matter particularly which effects I'm using, but I'm just to talk you through my chain. We've got this Lexicon Reverb. It's doing this kind of fun warbly thing. And then the other thing that I've got going on as a send is the UAD Galaxy, which is like a space echo kind of thing, automating the decay rate and the feedback and all of this kind of good stuff. But yeah, so I recorded the output of those. So these two tracks here, I MIDI mapped the various sends across the different tracks, and then I'm recording from the outputs of these two effects return tracks here. You can't see that because my face is in the way. These two here, I'm recording from the outputs of those onto 2 audio tracks and just taking all of that stuff as raw audio data. I can get rid of these now because it'll save CPU. And as you can see, I've clipped out a lot of this stuff, muted things, chopped things around a little bit. But basically the overall effect of this is to try to add some interest. It's that dub mixing thing that I was talking about. The dub reggae influence of taking the stuff that you've got, performing it through these effects and things like that. And that's something that I really love. It informs my taste musically in a lot of senses. So that's why I'm integrating it into my track like this. For you, that might take a completely different shape. You know, it might be using some particular reverbs or delays that really speak to you and your aesthetic tastes. Or it might not be that you automate and perform stuff in it all. It might be very clear cut what happens when, and a very kind of precise, measured way of adding in these extra layers and sound designing stuff. For me, I like the kind of slapdash approach. I like getting in there hands-on. I think it brings some life to my tracks and it just kind of suits the way that I approach these things. But whatever this process looks like for you, whatever the additional layers, additional secret sauce is that makes sense for how you like to present your music, this is that stage where we go through and we think about how it all fits together and at what points we need more energy and what points we need a release of energy, and how these things all kind of play off one another throughout the whole length of your track. As we did last time, will add a recording of the whole track as it now stands in its pretty much final form, ready for mixing. That will be at the end of this video if you want to hear it. But for now, we will wrap up and just talk about this whole process. I hope you found some of that interesting, enlightening, dare I say, inspiring, maybe. All of this stuff is my way of trying to help you, give you a bunch of different things to think about and consider when you're making music, steps to take, planning out your process from one stage to the next to help you finish more songs. If you followed along with this with your own music, I would love to hear it. Send it to me either here on YouTube or email it to me, journey@outsidersound.co.uk. That would be super sick to hear something that you made. I am all about that. Thank you so much for following along this process with me. It's been really helpful even for me in my own perspective on the music making process. I hopefully am going to be able to finish more tracks than I ever have before. And case in point, I've already done one. We've put it together over the course of these videos, from the very early stages all the way to now this finished track with all of the musical material there, ready for the next stage of the process, which is a more production focused one. If you found this useful, beneficial in any way, I am so super glad. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. I am doing more videos about all of this stuff, about how to come up with ideas, different stages of the songwriting process, different creative production tips and tutorials. And if you have got music that is finished and you need some help with the production end of things, then consider getting in touch with me at outsidersound.co.uk. I offer production and mixing and mastering services to primarily queer people like myself, but even if that's not you and you want me to work on your music, come and get in touch, because I would love to hear from you. I would love to maybe work with you. I am really excited about hopefully helping people bring more music into the world, and if I do that by directly having my hands on the production end of things, fantastic. If it's just through the PDF and these video guides, then that is also fantastic. If you would like to hear me mix this very track that we've been working on throughout the course of this video series, that will also be a tutorial series that will be available for purchase from outsidersound.co.uk. I'm going to put some different bits of that up here as a kind of taster so that you can hear and see what that actually sounds like and looks like, and if that might be something you're interested in. But for this more technical, sound-oriented, production-oriented stuff, that is something that I am happy to provide more materials for. That's kind of the next step in this process, and it's something that's a bit more involved, but if it is relevant to you, then come and check that out, because I am really excited about that series, walking you through the entire mixing process of a weird fruity dance music track like the ones that I make. That's enough from me. I feel like I've done like a lot of kind of sincere chat here at the end of the series. I'm clearly feeling quite emotional and suddenly reflective on everything. As we record, it is the beginning of the new year, and I am just gearing up to get everything launched with Outsider Sound and the website. So yeah, I guess I'm in that mode of being a bit rambly, a bit emotional, and not a lot of joking around. But sometimes that's what life gives you. Stick around if you want to hear the finished version of our song. I haven't actually given it a name yet. It needs a name at some point, but have a listen to that at the end of the video. It's 6 minutes or so if you're into it, and you can go all the way back to that first video to see where we started and compare it to where we ended up, and trace every step of the process through the song completion kit and the 5 stages that we've gone through, from germination to fruition. That actually is a coherent plant metaphor. I didn't even realise I was doing that. Anyway, love you lots. Take care. Bye for now.